Welcome to The Catch Up, a podcast from the Daily Catch where we take you inside the news. My name is Walter Mullen, and I'm the publisher of the Daily Catch.
And I'm Emily Sachar, the editor of the Daily Catch.
In our show, we discuss stories that have appeared in the Daily Catch. We give you insights into how we put the stories together, offer additional observations, and discuss where the stories may be heading as we move forward. The Catch Up is sponsored by Hutton Brickyards on the Hudson in Kingston. So, Emily, you and I had the pleasure of going to Hutton Brickyards last week, and we had dinner at Edgewood Restaurant. Let's tell listeners a bit about how wonderful our experience was.
Oh, it was so much fun, Walter. First of all, it was a little bit of a post-Halloween moment because you drive up this very steep hill and you find yourself in front of this beautifully lit, old, I guess it's maybe a Victorian, but it has mansard roof. And the lighting it's not eerie, but it's just on the border of being a little creepy, but it's beautiful. Just, it spreads out. And then you walk around and you come up the staircase on the side and you're immediately greeted by somebody at the front door. It's like you're coming to someone's house, and it's not that there's a butler there, but it's a little bit like that. Did you get that feeling, Walter?
I completely got that feeling. I judge a restaurant from the whole experience, from the time you arrive until the time you leave. The food is obviously very important, but it's the whole experience. And they made us feel very welcome. It was really wonderful.
And then the meal was just fantastic. So we went for restaurant week, right? And I think it was some very reasonable amount of money. It was under $50. And we got an appetizer and a main course. I had a duck pate. I had a black cod. And then this scrumptious chocolate mousse. I was so tickled. But you know, Walter, aside from the conversation, and we were there for, I think, 2.5 hours talking. It was great. I was so mindful the whole time of how quiet it was around me. Even though the restaurant was full, it was a very ambient experience. You could hear yourself, you could hear your table mates. So many restaurants nowadays, you cannot hear anything that's going on. And I find I'm very sensitive to that. Are you, Walter? You know, we're a little older.
Absolutely. As I get older, noise in a restaurant is the number one factor, because if you can't hear your fellow diners talking, it's not enjoyable.
Yeah, it was just magical. And then on the way out, I noticed in another room, so there's several rooms where you can have your meal, there was a beautiful fireplace with a gorgeous, intricately detailed grill on the front of the fireplace. I don't know if that fireplace works or not, but the grill was just, I went up to it, I wanted to touch it. You know, it's like when you have a beautiful texture in front of you on somebody's dress and you just want to touch it, or you want to run your hands through somebody's curly hair. That's what this grill reminded me of. That's better than an advertisement, right?
It's better than an advertisement. It's an endorsement. Edgewood Restaurant and Bar is now open for the season. For hours, menus, and reservations, visit huttonbrickyards.com. Edgewood Restaurant and Bar, part of the Hutton Brickyards experience, is at 132 Lindsley Avenue in Kingston. Okay, Emily, it's time for us to catch up.
Let's do it, Walter.
So, Emily, our favorite story, the boat club, is back in the news. What happened this week?
Yes. So this week, Walter, the planning board was due to review 3 new proposed local laws that were passed with the idea of trying to replace an earlier law that had been knocked down by a judge. And we'll get into that in a minute. But essentially, their job was to try to decide if the town's new approach to managing the boat club property on the waterfront in Barrytown was consistent with its own goals and plans for the waterfront. And that was their immediate objective, their immediate assignment. And to do that, they were intending to look at what was expected to be a new analysis from the town about the impacts. The planning board found that they didn't have enough information to make the determination that they were asked to make. And across several different objectives, several different categories, they felt that the town board still is not produced an approach to the boat club / public park idea that satisfies the planning board.
Let's step back for just a minute and bring listeners up to date. Remind us about the actions taken by Justice Maria Rosa in August. What was the issue before her and what did she decide?
Yeah, so in August, Justice Maria Rosa of Supreme Court ruled annulled a local law that had been passed in February by the town board. And the reason she annulled that law, sending the town board of Red Hook back to the drawing boards, is she said, look, town board, you fully intended to take the boat club by eminent domain. And when you took it by eminent domain, you intended to turn it into a public park. And when you turn it into a public park, there are going to be environmental impacts. What are some of those environmental impacts? Well, there's going to be a road that now carries the 200 members of the boat club, but is apparently going to be possibly bringing 11,000 Red Hook citizens across the road. You're going to be putting people on that property who are going to need more access to bathrooms. You want to possibly put in ramps to allow boats to get into the water. All of these are things that can have an environmental impact. And when towns in New York State pass laws that may impact the environment, they are required to do something called a seeker review. And that stands for State Environmental Quality Review Act. And Walter, when they do that review, they are expected to do what's called taking a hard look. Now, that sounds very dicey and loosey-goosey, but what it means is that they're supposed to really nail down what are all the impacts going to be to the environment. And what the justice decided, what she ruled in August, is that the town had not been transparent in its intent. And for that reason, their seeker review had been incomplete. So she said to them, you know what? That local law that you passed had more intents behind it than you told us about. You were not transparent. And you now need to go back and pass a different kind of law that makes your intent clear. And you need to do, this was implied in her decision, you need to now do a seeker review that really tells the public, tells the state, tells the environmental authorities what is going to happen to that property and how will it be impacted by this change of use. That's what happened.
Okay, so slow down. I have two questions. So in August, the justice was saying there are two things you have to do. You have to complete your seeker review and also create a new law. I'm a little confused by that.
Now, some of this, she didn't say you have to create a new law. She annulled a law, right? She said that law, that does not work. That law does not work because you were not clear, Town Board of Red Hook, in what your intent was to do with this property. If you have a plan and you have something you're going to do, you need to legally create the law to do that. So she basically sent them back to the drawing board. She said, that law, nope, that doesn't work. But what I'm explaining is the reason she didn't like the law is because it didn't trigger the kind of seeker review, the kind of environmental review that she felt was necessary. Now, I want to say one other thing here. The town board then did another seeker review in the summer when it had announced its intent to take the boat club by eminent domain. But that seeker review replicated exactly what it had done earlier. Namely, the town board said there's going to be no impact. And that's where the rubber hit the road this week with the planning board. They said, full stop, full stop. There is going to be an environmental impact, and you need to bring it to us accurately and thoroughly. And that's what they stated.
So between August and the middle of November, where we are now, what has the town board done to move the ball down the field?
Having faced the annulment of Local Law 1, which was passed in February of 2025, they've now passed 3 new local laws in its place, essentially. One of them is not relevant to our discussion at all. It doesn't concern the boat club. There are 2 others that do, and they are both intended to make clear that the town intends to take the boat club by eminent domain and intends to put a public park in its place. So we don't need to get into all the little pieces and bits and pieces of it, but what they essentially did was they carved out part of Local Law 1 that concerned cannabis dispensaries and some short-term rental stay requirements. They carved that off into another law, and they kept all the boat club stuff in what I believe is Local Law C. And that's where the seeker review comes into being and comes into place.
Okay, so let me see if I have this clear. The town has now made it very clear they plan to take the boat club by eminent domain. They've also made it very clear that they plan to turn it into a public park. And now at the planning board meeting that happened this week, the planning board is saying you need to do a lot more homework and come back to us and tell us how this public park is going to be executed and what are the environmental impacts. Am I getting it right?
You are so nailing it, Walter. I guess that my explanation is making some sense. Good.
But now here's a question. What authority does the planning board really have in this? Can they put the brakes on this whole thing or can it continue? They can scream and yell all they want, but can the town board do whatever it wants?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting question, and it causes us a little bit to need a crystal ball. So the planning board is an advisory board, right? They don't pass legislation, they don't execute. They have a lot of decision-making authority on things like what does your outdoor porch look like at your residence? What does your signage look like at your new store? Is your interior accommodating and your exterior accommodating ADA requirements? There are all kinds of things where their decision is final and important and crucial. But in this particular role, looking at the seeker and working as a committee ruling on the local waterfront revitalization program that the town board has in place, they don't have authority. However, and this is really important to state, the town board and the planning board can be subject to lawsuits. And when they, as they just have been, right, as we just discussed, and in those lawsuits, the judges may very closely look at the actions taken by the planning board. They may reference them. It may be part of their rationale. It may be part of their decision making. So it's very important to planning board members that they are on record doing what they believe is their important advisory role.
And speaking of lawsuits, one sidebar to the story is the planning board decided to fire the attorney it had retained because that attorney was also working for the planning board. Is that right?
Working for the town board, yes.
Working for the town board.
Yes, exactly. Keenan Bean has been an attorney on both the boat club work for the planning board and the boat club work for the town board. And as members of the planning board have told the Daily Catch, the two boards, the planning board and the town board, have not been aligned on how the boat club project should move forward and whether the town board has been as transparent as the planning board would like and believes it should be under law. So they really felt it was a conflict of interest. They weren't firing Keenan Bean for any malfeasance or any incorrect action or for doing a poor job. They just felt that there was a conflict of interest. And that vote, by the way, was 5-1. So it was almost unanimous.
So let's drill down a bit more on this issue of transparency. I know there are some people on the planning board who feel that the town board has not been fully transparent and open with the public or with the planning board. You spoke with Ariadne Monteiro about this. Let's hear what she has to say.
We firmly believe that the town on this occasion and in past occasions has not provided us with enough information to render a thoroughly thoughtful and thorough analysis. I think that the town board believes that legislation is firmly their responsibility and that the planning board is merely here to rubber stamp.
Great. Yeah, that was great from Ariadne. And she also, Walter, had something to say about the impact of the town board's decision making and the way it's working with the planning board and why that matters. Let's hear that clip too.
The danger is that the people of Red Hook are not being given the oversight that they are statutorily entitled to. The code is designed so that there is oversight in the planning and land use venue through the planning board to make sure that the town is not overstepping. And by behaving in this fashion, the town is denying the people of Red Hook that oversight.
What are your comments on her comments, Emily?
Yeah, I think she raises some really interesting points, and she clearly is evincing a tremendous amount of frustration. The planning board is composed of expert people. On it, of course, are Christina Ducharme, one of the newly elected members of the town board, an architect who's worked in the area for years, Ariadne Monteiro, herself an attorney. Sam Phelan has been chair of the planning board. Very, very thoughtful man. We've seen, all of these people bring a great deal of thought to their process. And they're, of course, also volunteers. They're there because they really believe in and want to execute the zoning code of the town. And that's their job. And I think it's really interesting to watch how this is playing out. It's a very interesting civics lesson for all of us in how public process works in one of the towns we cover at the Daily Catch. So it's been a very interesting experience there.
It would appear that the town board would not want the planning board to be an obstacle. It would appear that they would want to work with them to move this process forward rather than have them put up roadblocks, which seems to be what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they have a clear mission. There's been a 3-2 break on the town board with Supervisor McKeon and Bill Hamill and Jacob Testa wanting to move this boat club project forward. And of course, we have one lame duck member, well, really two now, who have opposed the boat club project. So it's going to be interesting when we see the changing of the guard in January, when Christina Ducharme will take her seat and Ken Migliarelli will take his. We may still have that 3-2 split, but it's possible that with vociferous opposition coming from Christina and Kenny, that there may be some movement and we may see some changes in how this project moves forward. So we'll just have to take it a step at a time.
And then just real quick, once Christina makes that step over to the town board, how is her seat on the planning board filled? That's not a voted seat.
Right. And it's really great. Right now, we have a full planning board for the first time in a very long time. There's 7 members of the planning board, and we have 7 seats fully occupied. So Christina's departure will leave an opening on the planning board. That is appointed by the town board. Typically, Robert McKeon, the supervisor, will make nominations. The town board may conduct interviews. He may conduct interviews, and then that appointment is made. The planning board appointments are very important. They probably are the most important board in the town other than the town board itself. As I stated, although they don't pass legislation, they enact and enforce their interpretation of the zoning code. So very, very important body for any town, and especially right now in this town.
So back to the boat club, what are we looking for to happen next? What's the immediate next thing that we are watching for in this story?
Yeah, so the next thing is we're watching for the public hearing, which I believe, Walter, is next week at the town board on these local laws. And we can expect, I think, another night of vociferous opposition from members of the boat club. We have seen virtually no speak out on the other side. So that's the next thing we'll be paying attention to. And then from the side of the town board, we'll be looking to see what Robert McKeon and other members of the town board have to say when they get the readout from the planning board's meeting earlier this week from Monday night. We'll expect them to make some comments. So we'll see whether, in fact, to your point earlier, Walter, they decide to take under advisement some of the planning board's comments, or whether they choose to just continue to move forward as they have. And we'll be there, Walter.
So anyone who thought the boat club story was put to bed, it's not done. It keeps on rolling.
It keeps on sailing down the river, to have a silly little metaphor.
It keeps on making waves.
Making waves.
So in closing, Emily, I think you have some questions for me today, don't you?
I am very excited to be on the questioning side of the table for a moment. So, Walter, I know we are in the midst of a very important fundraising campaign. Why does the Daily Catch do this fundraiser, and why do we do it now?
So just to be clear, the Daily Catch is a nonprofit independent news operation. We do not charge a fee to read the Daily Catch. So we rely on donations from readers to support our our operation. And those donations go to pay the reporters and they go to pay the expenses of our newsroom. Our expenses are actually very low. We don't have a physical office, so our overhead is very low. Most of our expenses go toward salaries for our reporters, writers, and editors. We limit the fundraising to November and December because we're part of a matching grant program. So any money that comes in November, December is matched by these various grants. So that's why we limit it to just the last 2 months of the year.
Mm. Walter, how do you figure out as publisher the various ways to try to bring in money? What are some of the most successful ways that you use?
The most successful way is I do a series of emails out to our readers. So people who have opted in to receive our emails will be getting an almost weekly email from me during the campaign, asking them to support our operation and explaining why it's important to have their support. Once someone does give us a donation, the emails will stop. So that's an incentive to give us a donation. But so emails number one. We also have banner advertising all over our site and in our newsletters. And then we go out and we meet one-on-one with donors, and we just talk it up. And so you have to try many different ways to get the word out, but primarily the emails are the biggest lever I pull.
Mm-hmm. And are there certain kinds of emails, Walter, that you find really inspire people to give?
There's all different types. The more personal, the better. I think when there's a voice in the email that comes through, it obviously has more of an impact. So as time goes on, we'll have our reporters write emails. You're going to write an email for us next week, Emily. So we just try to mix it up and keep it fresh.
Mm-hmm. And how's it going so far, Walter? We're what, 10 days or 11 days or 12 days in?
The campaign is going very well. Our readers have been very generous. We've had a number of donations come in. So we thank everyone who's donated and we thank everyone who is going to donate.
And Walter, one final question for you. If somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, I don't really want to give. I have a lot of other expenses. What would you say to that person to try to motivate them to write us a check or give us their credit card for a small donation?
We think of the Daily Catch as I'm going to say the word, the people's newspaper or the people's news source. And it really is. We believe the paper, again, we call it the paper just because it's easier than calling it a news site. But we believe the Daily Catch is here for the people in Red Hook and the people in Rhinebeck. And if you want a newspaper, a news source in your town, we ask you to please help support us. You can give us $5, you can give us $50 or $100. You can also do a monthly donation. So we have many donors who give us a small monthly donation. We love our monthly donors because that money obviously comes in month after month.
Renews. I guess it's something you and I have talked about. If you read us, please support us. It feels good, I think, in life when you are availing yourself of a public service to put a little dollar in the can and say,
absolutely.
You'll feel more engaged too. You'll feel more like it's your paper. And as you said, it is the people's paper, and we think about it that way. Thank you, Walter. I'm so glad you talked about our campaign. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. This concludes our episode of The Catch Up. We hope you enjoyed listening. If you like our broadcast, please be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite platform, and you'll be notified every time we drop a new show. Thank you to Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud at Radio Free Rhinecilff for their help producing today's episode. And thank you to Esther Martell for her help with editing. And again, a very special thank you to our sponsor, Edgewood Restaurant and Bar at Hutton Brickyards, where every season brings a new way to dine on the Hudson. Edgewood is now open for the season. For menus and reservations, visit huttonbrickyards.com. Emily, it's always a pleasure catching up with you.
It was great, Walter. Have a great week.